All right, guys, Dr. Chaffee here. Just want to do a quick video on fiber and constipation, something that I've gotten a number of questions about regularly, and I've tried to answer here and there, but figured I'd just do a one-stop shop for that. Okay, so the long and short of it is you do not need fiber. Okay, it is not necessary. It is not good for you. In fact, it can cause problems. Okay, they say that you need it for your bowels to move, to increase motility, and kind of to an extent it can do that because it gives it something for your bowels to work on, to move around by peristalsis. But we also see that there are studies that show that it increases constipation and it slows things down for a number of reasons. One, you can dry out your stools and it just turns into a block of wood. Okay, and now you've got this big obstructive chunk, and when people get older, they get neurogenic colons, and they just are going to move slower anyway. But the breakdown of fiber in your colon, to a certain extent, it can't break it down very well, produces methane gas. Methane gas has been shown to reduce your motility of your colon. Okay, so that's going to make it move slower, thereby causing constipation, because now it's going to have longer in the colon. It's going to get drier. And the simple thing to do, guys, is just eat fat, because if you eat more fat, it'll just keep that soft anyway. It's already dry enough. You can stay in there till Christmas. It'll still be soft because it's not going to change the amount of fat that's there. Okay. Main reasons you don't eat this stuff: you can't digest it, you can't break it down, you don't get nutrition from it. Okay, we have an appendix. It's about that big. It's a vestigial organ. Vestigial meaning that millions of years it did something, now it does nothing, right? Well, millions of years ago, it was an elongated cecum, and this is where fiber packed into and broke down into short chain fatty acids, which is what our long distance ancestors, that's how the major nutrition that they got. That's what chimpanzees and gorillas and other primates that eat fibrous plants, that's how they get their nutrition. They break down fiber in this elongated cecum, and they get the majority of their calories from short chain fatty acids, right? We don't have that ability anymore. We cannot break down fiber anymore because we haven't done that in millions and millions and millions of years, right? So either way you want to look at it, we cannot break down fiber. We should not be eating fiber. Animals that eat fiber can break down fiber, right? We can't, we shouldn't. It was originally said you should eat fiber because you can't digest it, because you don't get any nutrition from it, and because it actually blocks the absorption of nutrients. It gets in the way. It's like physical tangles getting in the way of the enzymes to your food, so it can't break it down properly, and then the stuff that is broken down properly can't get to the borders of your small intestine to get absorbed in the first place. And they were saying this is what you're supposed to do. This is what during all the diet fads of the 80s, saying, oh, you should eat a lot of fiber because you can't get any nutrition from it, and it'll reduce the amount of nutrition that you absorb. That makes no biological sense. You cannot say that that is how we were designed, when it's blocking the absorption of nutrients. Nature is wild. It's kill or be killed. Everything is so efficient with how it works. There's no way that we would have been designed in any way through evolution or creation to block our own absorption of nutrients. Okay, you're just not going to make it. Up until the last century, most people were struggling to get enough nutrients, not struggling to keep nutrients away from them. That makes no sense. All right, so that's just dead wrong anyway. So, but people said you should eat fiber because you don't get nutrients from it. And everyone was getting constipated in the 80s because they all stopped eating fat. So, you need fiber, eat fiber. Well, why didn't we need fiber before 1986? Why is that exactly? Why isn't that, no one suggested this before, the 70s and 80s? That doesn't make any sense. If we just had no use for this before then we just came up with these problems, right? So they're saying you should eat this stuff because it blocks nutrients and because you don't get any nutrition from it, and it'll fill up your gut and make you feel like you're full, and you'll trick yourself into thinking you're full, and then you won't be as hungry. Okay, that makes no sense. All right, you are not going to trick your body. You're not going to trick your biochemistry, right? You're just not that smart. And if you were smart, you'd think about how your biochemistry works and how your biology works and try to do that. All right, so if you want to just, eat something to take up bulk and not get any nutrition from it, why don't you just eat a plastic bag, to doing the same thing, and you shouldn't eat fiber for the same reason you shouldn't eat a plastic bag. You can't get any nutrition from it. You cannot break it down, and it causes harm. All right. Fiber causes harm. It causes microabrasions in your gut lining, increases mucus secretion and immune dysregulation. And it's, anybody with autoimmune issues, Crohn's and ulcerative colitis or IBS, IBD, they will tell you they eat fiber, they have problems, right? When when surgeons do surgery on bowel, or someone has diverticulitis or, appendicitis, they're treating conservatively, they rest the bowel. What do they do to rest the bowel? They put them on a low fiber diet or even a no fiber diet because they don't want this causing harm. Okay, well, what does that mean? That means fiber is causing harm. It's making your bowel work when you want to rest it. You don't want to overwork it. And we see from studies that it's actually the increased fiber content that actually causes diverticulitis, or diverticulosis, I should say, and increased bowel motions. That's because you're overworking the colon. You're saying work. Well, it's just like your heart, and you have high blood pressure for years and decades. Eventually, it's just going to give up because it can't hack it anymore, and it fails, and you go into heart failure, right? Well, this is colon failure, diverticulosis. That's these outpouchings of the bowel, and it just starts failing. The muscles start failing and fatiguing and going floppy. They can't hack it anymore because you've overworked it. That's what happens when you eat fiber. That's what happens when you have multiple bowel motions a day. It's not good for you. You don't want to just keep moving this stuff at high speed. It's bad. It's bad for the organ. You're overworking it. You're damaging it. All right. So, when we see this in surgery, we also see this in autoimmune issues. And, if fiber was good for you, why wouldn't it be good for you in those circumstances? If this helped heal and strengthen your bowel, wouldn't you want it when your bowel was healing, when you had ulcerative colitis and Crohn's and you had these flare-ups? Wouldn't fiber be good for you? If fiber was good for you, if it provided benefit, wouldn't it provide a benefit during those times of stress as well? But they don't. It makes it worse. All right. So you need to think about that. All right. People say that you need fiber because it can get broken down into butyrate, and this is what feeds your enterocytes, the cells of your intestine, right? Okay, that's technically correct, but my answer to that is, who cares? Because we have butyrate from other sources. When you're on a carnivore diet and you're in a ketogenic state, you make ketones, right? That's a major energy source. One of the main ketone bodies is butyrate. Okay, so you're feeding your enterocytes from the inside out. My gut is not dying. It's not just running out of butyrate and not being able to survive. Okay, I've been doing this for 5 years, 10 of the last 20 years, and I eat no fiber whatsoever at all, ever, never, at all, ever. The Inuits don't either. The Maasai don't either, and our ancestors historically didn't either. All right, and so that's wrong. Right? So again, I say this a lot, but it really matters on how you address these things. It doesn't matter how brilliant your theory is, and it doesn't matter how smart you are. If it doesn't agree with experiment, it's wrong. Okay, so we did the experiment. I did it. It's wrong. All right, they say your enterocytes are gonna die, you're gonna get constipation, you're gonna have all these problems, and yet I didn't. So it's wrong. Period. Okay. Just referring back to that study, there was a study with thousands of people that looked at, contributing factors to diverticulosis. They looked at constipation, they looked at meat intake, they looked at fat intake, they looked at fiber intake, they looked at number of bowel motions a day. They found the only things that were correlated with increased rates of diverticulosis were more fiber you eat, more bowel motions you had a day. They had a high correlation with diverticulosis. None of the others did. None of them. People say traditionally, well, when you're constipated, this is so dry and hard and it stretches this out, and that's what causes your colon to fail. Wrong. That is not borne out by the data. That was a guess, and that guess was wrong. And so you have to scrap it, right? So, most of the studies that say that fiber is good for you are based on supposition, or they're just epidemiological nonsense. They're just not good studies. There aren't really any experimental controlled trials in this. There's, that there's one study, it was underpowered. There's only like 75 people, and they looked at people that had gut issues and bloating and pain, and they were just eating whatever they were eating, and they split them up into several groups, and they had one group eat more fiber, one just stayed the same amount of fiber, one reduced the fiber, and one just completely eliminate the fiber. All right, and contrary to popular opinion, you had the exact opposite effect that you would have thought traditionally, right? So people that ate more fiber got worse. People that ate the same amount of fiber, surprise, surprise, they stayed the same. Ate less fiber, they got better. Ate no fiber, completely resolved. Okay, so this is an underpowered study. There's 75 people, but it's at least interesting, and it's something that go counter to these epidemiological studies that are no way, shape, or form as strong as even a small trial like that. All right, because that's an actual experimental trial where you are changing parameters and you are changing one factor. You're trying to keep it to one, and then you're seeing what happens. Okay, that's an actual experiment, and if done well, it shows way better information than any epidemiological study. All right. So, what is fiber? Fiber is cellulose. What is a tree? A tree is cellulose. All right. Sawdust is fiber. Right. And in fact, if you don't believe me, look it up, because they add sawdust to a lot of different foods to increase the fiber content, because now fiber is classified as an essential nutrient, right? So, you need more fiber. The more fiber, the better. The more of an essential nutrient you get, the better. Well, no, that's not true, because you can get toxicities on any sort of vitamin, even the vitamins that we need or will die, right? So that's wrong. And also, it's not essential. The amount of fiber that you need throughout your entire existence is 0 grams throughout your entire life. That is not essential. What essential means is that if you don't get it, you will die. Okay, that does not happen with fiber. All right, that is completely wrong. That is a complete a misrepresentation of just the word essential. All right, they've completely bastardized that. It's wrong. So that's fiber in a nutshell. You don't need it. It causes harm. Stay away from it. Now let's talk about constipation. Constipation, people think of as just not going that much. So in people go carnivore, they're just not going as often, and they're freaking out. Oh my God, I'm just constipated. I'm so constipated. And they're thinking that this is just tied up and you just have some big ball of mass and it's just not moving anywhere. Well, that's not the case, because you're absorbing 98% of the food that you eat, at least. And if you're eating less gristle, you're going to absorb even more than that. All right. So the vast majority of the food that you're eating is going to be absorbed. All right. Contrast that with plants, fibrous plants. The vast majority of what you eat will not be absorbed, and that will have to come out the other end, because you can't absorb it. It has to go out. Right. So most of this will get absorbed. Therefore, you'll have very little waste. It's in the name. It's waste. It's wasteful. You don't need it. You didn't need it, and you don't want it. So your body's getting rid of it. All right. So you have very little waste with meat, because you actually want almost all of it. Okay. So you're going to go less often. So don't be surprised if you only go a couple times a week, maybe even once a week, maybe even less. It doesn't matter as long as your stool is soft, right? So it still goes by, the Bristol stool chart, and it's just about a matter of consistency. It's not a matter of frequency. So if it's soft and comfortable to pass, you're fine. All right. If it's dry and hard, that's constipation. All right. If it's dry and hard, what does this mean? That means you're not eating enough fat, usually. All right. As I've said in other videos, it takes bile to absorb fat, mostly. You can absorb a bit of fat without bile. Most of it gets absorbed with your bile, and you run out of bile. You only produce a certain amount a day, and I think that means that's how much fat your body wants in a day. All right, so that's how much bile your body is producing. That's how much fat your body wants to bring in. After that, it just spills over. It's just a spill release, and it goes out. Your body's going to absorb some of it after that, but not much. All right. That excess fat is what's going to keep your stool soft. All right, it gets into your stools, it keeps it soft. Oil repels water, it's already completely desiccated, so it doesn't matter how dry your stools get in the colon, it's still going to be the same amount of fat. It's still going to be soft. So your stool can sit in there till Christmas. It's still going to be just that nice soft consistency. All right. And why are we fighting against this anyway? Why are we fighting against our nature? Our colon is supposed to draw out water from our stools. It's supposed to conserve water so that we don't have to take in so much water, because sometimes it's difficult. Sometimes we don't have access to water and you will die from thirst and dehydration. So your body needs to be efficient at this. You can't just be dumping out water all the time. We didn't always have plumbing. We didn't always have access to clean water. It's actually very recently that we had that. So it's very important for your body to conserve water. And when you have fat in there, you can conserve all the water that you want and it'll still be soft. Well, what's the other side? Loose stools. All right. So if you're eating a lot more fat than your body can absorb, it's not going to harm you. It's just going to come out. And that's going to come out as loose stools. All right. And, you know, people that remember back in the 90s, they had the fake fat potato chips called like Olean, where your body tasted like fat. So you liked the flavor and you could deep fry chips in it. And people, oh, you don't absorb it. And so your body just passes this stuff because your body couldn't absorb it at all. And I swear to God, one of the cautions on the label was may cause anal leakage. That's not a very good selling point. Just you know, the sound of that is awful. But what is that? That means that, you know, you have excess fat in your stools. It's going to be more loose, it's going to be more oily, and it's going to come out in a more dramatic fashion. So if that's the case and you're only eating meat and water, then you can just pull back on the amount of fat. You don't need to eat as much fat, and then you just balance that out. And so you always know exactly how much fat you're getting on a carnivore diet by your stools. Now there are confounding factors, because coffee will give you loose stools. That will increase the motility of your gut, and that'll push things through faster than you want, and your body doesn't get a chance to absorb the water, and it'll go out in dramatic fashion. And then also artificial sweeteners. Artificial sweeteners are notorious for causing osmotic diarrhea. So it gets into your colon, it sucks water into your colon, and then that flushes out, and you have very loose, watery stools. People go carnivore, and some of them, I never did, some of them have loose stools and just, torrential diarrhea for weeks. Maybe it doesn't stop. Maybe it goes months. Quite often, these people are still drinking coffee, still using artificial sweeteners, usually in their coffee. Well, guess what, guys? This is going to cause a problem. And maybe it didn't cause as much of a problem before, but that's because you had just so much more gunk in your GI tract that it just sort of, didn't shift the load quite as well, and it didn't come out, in such a mess. But because you're not really because you're absorbing all of this stuff, you don't really have much solid matter to go out. So there's a lot more liquid stuff, and you're just pushing that stuff through, and it's just all coming out in a watery mess. So don't drink coffee, don't use artificial sweeteners, right? Especially if you're having that problem and you want that problem to stop. If you are not having any coffee, any artificial sweeteners, you are only eating meat, you are only drinking water, and you are still having loose stools, and it's not an infection, you're not sick or have fever or anything like that, pull back on the fat. Just pull back on the fat, and usually that will sort things out. I've seen one example where people were eating less and less and fat, and they still sort of having a bit of problem, and it's still likely to me that they were probably just having a bit too much fat. But you can also go the other way, because if you have way too little fat, you can actually get diarrhea, loose stools from the other direction. You can also get overflow diarrhea. This is something very common in elderly, where you actually get so constipated that you have a solid block of matter there, and then there's just this liquid just squirting all around it, and then you end up having loose stools and watery diarrhea, and then all of a sudden you have this big plug that comes out, and a lot of diarrhea after that, and then it sort of starts the whole issue back over again. So there are some combinations, there are some exceptions, and there are some nuances to this, but most often you're getting constipated because you're not eating enough fat. you're getting loose stools because you're either drinking coffee and artificial sweeteners, and this is just going to be more sensitive to the loose stools when you're on a carnivore diet, or you're eating more fat than your body can handle, and it just goes out. So you're not going to hurt yourself. You're not going to, if you're eating too much, not too much fat, because it's not going to harm you. I don't believe it will harm you, because most of this stuff goes out. And you will absorb a small percentage of that, usually like medium chain fatty acids without bile, but most of it will go out, okay? So most of that is not going to get into your body and give you excess calories and fat and cause a problem. All right, if you really overdid it and you got that small percentage absorption, sure. Or if you're taking ox bile or one of those supplements, that can force your body to absorb fat more than what your body wants, and okay, you can screw up the works, but you are doing something there, okay? And you don't need to do that. So if you're just letting your body work naturally, it's going to have this spillover, and it's not going to cause any harm to you. It's just going to be inconvenient. And if you don't really care about that and you like the fat that you're eating, it's fine. But if that's an inconvenience to you, which it would be probably an inconvenience to most people, just pull back the fat a bit, okay? All right, guys, I hope that's helpful. I hope that's sort of answered some questions that you may have had. If you like this, please like and subscribe to my channel and my podcast. And if you think that there's someone who might find this useful or beneficial, maybe had this question, please share it with them so they can learn about this as well, and hopefully overcome any problems that they have, either with their worry about whether they need fat or if they're having problems with constipation as well. All right. Okay, guys, thank you very much. Appreciate it. And we'll talk to you soon. Hey, guys, thank you very much for taking the time out to listen to what I had to say. If you like it, then please like and subscribe to my YouTube channel and podcast. And if you're on YouTube, then please hit that little bell and subscribe, and that'll let you know anytime I have a new video out, which should be every week, if not more. And if you could share this with your friends, that would help me get the word out and let me know that you like what I'm doing. Thanks again, guys.